You know, I read my Bible, read it about as much as most folks I know, which probably isn't enough. Regardless of my laxity and backsliding, I take some things away from my sporadic readings of the Word. I find myself struck by the Holy Family. You know, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Mostly the stories focus on Jesus and Mary, understandably. But what about Joseph? He's mostly in the background. My take on him is that he was just sort of an ordinary Joe of his time. Just a working class guy from a backwater town like the rest of us. A humble carpenter who goes to marry a young woman, and that's when the trouble begins. Like it does for a lot of us. You know, one day you're a workaday carpenter just looking for a helpmate. One who's kind of cute and that your folks approve of, and the next thing you know, you're the stepfather of the Son of God. Or at least that's how she explains it. Then, were that not enough, then you're fleeing for the life of your family, back to Egypt. The land of enslavement of your forefathers because you had some sort of spiritually charged pizza dream? It's a classic picture of middle age. That poor man was not in charge, and didn't he know it? And so it goes for all of us. Would that we could all be as graceful as that humble, pious man. Now jump ahead in the story 13 years, and the poor guy takes his family to a family reunion. On the way back, discovers his stepson is missing. Panic ensues. 2 sleepless days and nights of looking for the kid. The wife's inconsolable, climbing the walls, and as fear shifts to anger once the boy is found, likely Joe's old-school Jewish father plans to justice that kid up one side and down the other dissolve when he's found at the temple. Teaching the elders? Mercy! As though the folks around the town well didn't have enough to kibitz about your weird little family, and now this? No easy gig being Jesus Christ's stepdad. Give the poor man a break. I find a lot of comfort in Joseph. Clearly, like me, he did his best to raise his kids as well as he knew how, and was still at a loss, just like me and every other honest parent I know. You'd think, given how long people have been having kids, that we'd have it down to a science by now. But we don't. Even holy Joseph struggled to know what to do. We bring these kids into the world, or sometimes, as in Joseph's case, they're given to us. We give the job of raising them our best shot, and more often than not, our best efforts derail into a worrisome state of near total chaos. All the good ideas we had about raising kids before we had kids blurs into a swirling fog once those little screaming, kicking people enter the scene, and we find we're just trying to stumble from one day to the next with some thin ghost of our former sanity, and maybe a shred of dignity. Most of the time I don't know what to do, and given what I read of holy Joseph, neither did he. He just proceeded in faith and had the good sense not to ask too many questions. Maybe I should try that more often. He's a background figure through most of the Holy Family story, cranking away in his workshop, trying to support a family and teach his stepson a stable trade and work ethic. And maybe therein lies the role of a dad, to be a quiet, steady support figure. That's sort of my take on this whole masculine project of being a family man. You live in service to others. And frankly, what could be more valuable than that? Joseph held the family together in his quiet way, despite his doubts and confusion. And the way I see it, it's the role of the rest of us common Joes, to hold the family and the greater family of society together in our mundane but meaningful ways, even if we don't really know exactly what we're doing. The important part is that we're doing. Was there relief for Joseph? For his good fight? Not in the immediate. No tangible payoffs in his time. His stepson went on to become a figure of great controversy, and ultimately was executed in the electric chair of the day, the cross. Grievous stuff. Holy Joseph likely had died before that time, worn out from supporting a family, but likely the folks back in Nazareth, kibitzing around the village well, had little good to say about Joe's efforts and the outcome of his strange stepson. Like Joseph, I have to recognize that my quiet, clumsy efforts aren't likely to get credit in their time, if ever. My kids may someday complain to their therapists about what I said or made them do in service of growing some character, and they won't see the purity of the intent of my efforts until maybe they're equally yoked, if ever. For we the faithful, the stepson that Joseph fostered, was ultimately the salvation of humanity, the builder of a spiritual bridge from our flawed human state to the perfect grace of God the Creator. So there's a silver lining to Joseph's story. He proceeded in faithful service to his humble role, and ultimately, good things came of it. I'm not saying that any of us will earn sainthood by following in Holy Joe's example, but I'd wager that in our earnest efforts, good things will be fostered, the fruits of which we might likely never see. Holy Joseph.